Okay, so the reason you're looking at a mug of tea is because of a really good analogy for content design that I happened upon who knows when. But essentially, if content is a mug, a tea bag, milk and water from the tap, then content design is giving someone thirsty a nice hot mug of tea. So hi, hello, I'm Jo Dimbleby. I am a freelance content designer. I'm a strategist and I also do UX writing. And there is a lot to say about content design, so I will be rattling through in the next half an hour. There is time at the end for questions. I'm more than happy to stay on a bit extra time if anybody has, wants to have a kind of longer conversation about this. So, let's go. There we go. So in this talk, I'm going to go through what a content designer is and isn't, languages of design material, how content designers fit into the design process, why content design is more important than it's ever been. And in the end, I'm going to share some content design resources with you for those who are interested in learning more. And I just want to say now, I'm not going to be reading all the bullet points off the page, so don't be worried. So there's quite a lot of misconceptions around what content design actually is. I mean, some people might think that it is a glorified term for copywriter or copy editor. Some people think that it's just about shortening everything and making everything have bullet points in it. Or even, yeah, the phrase I've used here, dumbing things down. So, you know, taking something that's nuanced and complex and making it kind of dull. Or other people might think, oh, it's just the job of, you know, putting the words into the website or putting the words into the app once it's been designed. Well, all of those have a grain of truth in them, but actually the content design is so much wider and more interesting as a discipline than just those things. So the way I would define content design is that it's a completely essential process within any service or product design. And that might sound like a big claim, perhaps an overstatement. But then if we look at what content does for us, so without content, we'd have no body copy, no captions, no links, no headings or subheadings, no times, dates, locations, no calls to action, no menu or category labels, no images, no brand names, and nothing to search for. We'd have pretty much no communication at all, unless you're interested in kind of like abstract Mondrian-esque kind of combinations of squares and a kind of lozenge shape. But yeah, it hasn't really done much for The Guardian or Deliveroo to remove their content. In fact, you know, the Guardian site could just as easily be for a pet shop. Deliveroo could just as easily be, I don't know, a dating site. So content, of which this is the pure HTML content that I just removed from the Guardian website, is absolutely essential to product and service design. So it can't be separated. The visual cues and interactions that we've just seen, they don't make any sense without content. And the content also, in this kind of symbiotic relationship, doesn't become an experience, a flow, without visual cues and interactions. So the two work together. Just lost my place. Okay, So let's think about the materials of content design. Now, we saw before that the assumption perhaps is that content designers primarily work with words, or content designers just work with words. And that might be the case, but we also use all of these materials in order to communicate. And I just want to draw your attention to the sixth item on this list, which is speech. And the reason that's interesting is because speech as a material of content design means that all of us are essentially content designing every single day. So every single time you have a conversation with somebody, you are content designing. You assess the person's mood based on what you know about them and the circumstances that you're in. You consider the context of this conversation. Are you rushing to get somewhere? Are they rushing to get somewhere? Are you sitting on the sofa together with nothing to do for the next hour? You choose the information you think is relevant or interesting to them. So what do they need to know? What would they enjoy knowing about? And then you convey that information in as clearly as you can in a way that you think they will understand or enjoy. And also one of the key ways that you become a better conversationalist or a better content designer is by providing a level of detail that's appropriate to the situation. So if someone's rushing out the door, you don't immediately start a story that lasts half an hour, for example. And you also consider your relationship to that person. So you might tell your mother things that you wouldn't tell your friend. You might tell your friend something that you wouldn't say in a job interview. This is content design. It's about that conversation. Anyway, so to go back to the materials that content designers use when they are working with a product or a service. Okay, hang on. I've got a quote here. So this is from the author of Content Design, and it's basically what we've just described. This conversation is as a content design. So throughout content design, as a definition of content design, we are using what we know about the audience to give them what they need at the time they need it and in a way that they expect. That's content design. It's not proofreading. It's not copy editing. It's not putting the words in at the last minute. So yeah, to go back to materials, all of these materials are language. And this is, you know, the system that we all use to communicate with each other all the time, every day. And content designers use this language, our language, as a material. And this material is us attempting to bridge the gap between our intentions and other people's interpretation. So that sounds slightly complicated. But yeah, so we think of a thing and we want somebody else to understand that thing. And so how are we going to use language to describe what we are thinking of in a way that other people will understand based on their own mental model? Because we all have different ways of interpreting everything. You watch a film with somebody, you love it, they hate it. You have a conversation with somebody, they take away something, you thought you said something completely different. It's So for example, I'm thinking of blue cube. I say, you know, blue cube to somebody thinking this is perfectly clear. Other people might have completely different understanding of Blue Cube. And my job as a content designer is to understand that they might have different interpretations and work out how to get around that so that they understand that I'm actually talking about this Blue Cube. This, yeah, it is not easy. And there are many, many ways that you can create less than effective content. So, for example, being vague. Using language that the user does not understand. Or using language that is just completely wrong for this audience. I mean, I put this in Comic Sans because it's so dreadful. But yeah, you just imagine, like, you know, having to have a root canal and then you agree to this way in like a dentist office. You know, it's not good content design. So in fact, it's much easier to create confusion than it is to communicate clearly. So, you know, everybody who is human and who has had dealings with other humans know how easy it is to create accidental misunderstandings. So the job of the content designer is to try and convey information as clearly as possible, using all those language as design materials. And part of this job is making it appear frictionless to the users. And it's one of those frustrating things about good design. It's like, well, you know you've got it right when people don't even notice it. If people point out what you've done, then you kind of know, there's something there that I need to work on. But if people just look at what you've created, your prototype, without comment, that normally means you're basically along the right lines because you're doing something that's intuitive. So yeah, your content can very easily work against you. And yeah, it's a fact. Poorly designed content is a risk when you are designing. It can lower trust, it can, you know, lower your conversion rates, it can mean that people look elsewhere for the service or for the product, and it can mean that overall their experience of using whatever product and service that you've created is actually you know, much less satisfying than it might have been otherwise. So let's look at where content sits within the design process. Now, I don't know how many of you will remember the bad old days. So, I mean, again, I put this in Comic Sans because it's just, it's so awful in hindsight. I can't even believe that we did this. But anyway, so for example, here you had somebody who was creating a project spec, and they probably weren't even going to be involved in design or development process. They potentially had never even spoken to anybody apart from the CEO of the client, who obviously had all their own preferences, which then would go into that project spec. Then from there, we'd go into, front-end design, very lovely, very exciting, and we'd have roughly a week to get that signed off by the client, and there would be some nice coloured boxes, they would be laid out very neatly, it would all look really swish, and within those coloured boxes, you'd have some nice lorem ipsum to show, you know, whereabouts you'd put some words, you know, whatever those words might be. It would just to make it look like there's something in the page. Yes, very nice. Okay, signed off, tick. So then you can leap straight into development. This grueling process of development with these endlessly moving goalposts and, you know, this hopelessly over-featured product with all the latest tech ads, all the kind of like, oh yeah, we'll have a dot tell as well, you know, just monstrous things, monstrous. And then at some point, people would go, oh, we should probably like put something in the menus. So you'd sit down together, and over the process, over about 2 hours, you'd put together a menu structure, you know, based on, you know, making sure the labels didn't exceed 12 characters, or making sure that you could only have 4 menu items, because otherwise, you know, the page would break. So it's like development-led design here. And then, you know, funnily enough, you know, with all this kind of like confusion, you'd end up missing the launch date. And then, you know, somebody from the client might actually look at what had been done already at some point and be like, that's not going to work for us. You know, you might actually start talking to stakeholders, start talking to subject matter experts, and they'd be like, meh, what is this? This is dreadful. So you'd end up having to redo loads of stuff at the last minute. And then, you know, just before the end, just before launch, somebody would be like, oh, hey, Joe, could you cut and paste in the copy from this client's Word document that somebody's basically put together from you know, a PDF of one of their brochures, and, you know, make it work. So there would be, like, you know, sleepless nights trying to basically figure out like how the hell you were going to make something coherent from what was essentially just a bunch of coloured boxes with lorem ipsum in them. And then, you know, you get to launch. There'd be loads of immediate user problems, there'd be urgent fixes, there'd be these really horrible workarounds that everybody would hate and be really upset about. And then at some point within the next year or so, you would basically just get fired, probably after doing quite a lot of free work. That's what I remember. It was horrible. Don't want to go back there. So now, fortunately, we are no longer in that terrible place where, you know, essentially it was like building a house, but you didn't have any architectural plans for the house, and you didn't even know who was going to live there or what kind of lifestyle they were going to lead. So you'd end up with this house that had like a, you know, a living room that was like 5 foot square, and then a bathroom the size of a football pitch. That's an analogy that the content strategist Rachel McConnell uses for if you are designing content last. It's dangerous. Don't do it. But anyway, apart from PTSD, we're out of that now, and I just want to show you this really good model for user experience. This is by a user experience designer called Corey Sturm. I don't know how to, I think it's QB or CUBI, not sure how to pronounce it. I've never heard it said out loud, but that doesn't matter. What it demonstrates is what matters, is that content and interaction working together can help you meet user goals and business goals. And if you don't have, if you're not considering one of these, then you are not going to have good user experience. And I think this is something that, you know, this is how thinking has really undergone like a massive revolution in terms of service design and product design, is that now we're thinking about this first. It's not about getting into development as quickly as possible. It's how can we get all of this balanced so that we are achieving user goals and business goals? Because if you can do that, you've won. So content designers actually, we don't tend to work alone anymore, thank goodness. We tend to work as part of multidisciplinary teams. So with researchers, content designers, strategists, interaction designers, visual designers, information architects, business analysts, developers, product strategists. That team, that strong team, having that in place from the beginning to the end of a project, or the beginning to the end of a cycle within that project, that's going to make anything that comes out of that project so much stronger. And content designers, fortunately, are now acknowledged as having a place within that team, having a place within UX, rather than being just some word person that you bring in afterwards. And I think that is you know, it's so gratifying because it actually works, as opposed to the previous one, which was just horrible. So yeah, think content first. If you are working on a project and you get to the point of development and you don't know what is in the what content you're going to have within your product, or how you're going to talk to somebody about your service, you need to go back, because words are much cheaper than months and months of development time while you work out what features you actually need and what you don't. So if you start with words, start with content, you can be testing that with users, you know, way before you even think about you know, paying for developer time. It just makes more sense. So there's a content design case study that I want to present to you. I will say that there's a slight trigger warning around this. It is COVID related. So if you want to go and make a cup of tea or have a break for 5 or 10 minutes, that's fine. Don't worry, please do so. I think as a case study to demonstrate the importance of content design, it doesn't really get more important than this. And it's certainly, unfortunately, it's relevant to all of us at the moment. So yeah, let's have a look. So here we have accurate information about COVID-19. It's very dense. It's written for public health officials. It's written for medically trained people. For people like me, it at first glance gives me the sense that it's not for me, and you know, it's intimidating. It looks tiring. I don't understand lots of the words. Prodromal phase. I don't understand. So the technical term for this kind of feeling when you come across content that you just can't get into is what's known as linguistic insecurity. I found that out yesterday, and I'm going to drop that into as many conversations as possible. So linguistic insecurity. This here down the side, this kind of like tables and tables and tables and tables, is that's the WHO report, and I think on something like the 18th or 19th page, there's a single paragraph that says advice for the public, and it's written in similar language to this. So yeah, it's all well researched. It's all, you know, as accurate and nuanced as the scientists and medical researchers and public health strategists can make it, but it's not for us. It's not for us. And then on the other hand, you have COVID misinformation, you have rumor, you have spin, you have lovely snappy headlines that don't really tell us the whole story. You have lies. And, you know, imagine if you're the public, you know that there's this outbreak and you're trapped between the two. So you've got this incredibly dense information on one hand, and then you've got this incredibly seductive, tempting, simple ideas on the other hand. So content designers in this situation have really, really had to step up and meet people where they are. And this is like the first thing that you need to do on any content design, is think about where people are going to be when you're talking to them. What state of mind are they going to be in? So, for example, here we've got frustration, we've got anxiety, we've got confusion, people are scared, people could be grieving as well. So as a content designer, you need to think, how can I convey the information that these people need while they're in this state of mind? Fortunately for us, the NHS is incredibly good at this. This is brilliant, brilliant content design. So it is actively reassuring. Like every page of their site, if you have a symptom, you go on there and you are immediately feel as if you're being talked to by a kindly nurse. And there's no kind of fluffiness. It's just very, very direct, but you feel reassured because of you feel like you can rely on the information that you're being given. And along with this, there's been a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure this information is findable. So if you Google, you know, COVID infection, NHS advice is at the top. You know, their SEO is on point. You know, they're making sure that, you know, bullshit is not appearing above them in results. So also, all of these pages that they've created on the NHS website is accessible in so far as you can make it so. So, you know, if you're using assistive technology such as screen readers, then this makes sense to you. It's not full of you know, like strange links that don't mean anything. It's not full of images that don't have alt text, that don't actually you know, convey any additional information. It's not full of graphs that you can't pass because you know, you are basically only able to hear a website. So that's good content design as well. Also, thinking back to, you know, the state of mind that people might be in. People might be panicking. People might be wondering, do I call an ambulance? So all of this information is scannable. That's why content designers really resent the idea that what we do is dumbing down. It's not dumbing down, it's opening things up and allowing people to get the information they need as quickly as possible. And to make sure when they find that information that it's understandable, it's in the language that they can action. It's not something where they have to sit down and it's just like figure out, okay, you know, I've got to go through this paragraph and work out, you know, what exactly they're saying. It's as clear as it can possibly be. So that's an example of really, really good content design. On the other side, yeah, it's helping to save lives. Yeah, I mean, not claiming hero status, but it genuinely is helping to save lives in that context of the NHS website. But yeah, on the other hand, we have this. Is this reassuring? No. Is this findable? No, it's an image. So there's you know, you can't read this with a screen reader. It's not accessible. Is it scannable? Well, yeah, but it doesn't really tell us anything. And is this understandable? No, it's not. It might seem so on the surface, but actually it's really dangerous content design. You know, the colors and the capitalization is actually quite anxiety inducing rather than reassuring. The language they've used is confusing. Like, what do they mean by control? Control the virus? Like, what are we being asked to do? And then, you know, stay alert is so vague. So vague, that actually, you know, people, sorry, I'm just actually quite angry about this, but, you know, people are being told, this is what you need to do, but they're not being told, there's nothing understandable about this as a piece of content design. It's confusing, I mean, I don't want to get into too many conspiracy theories, but I would say it's almost designed to be misinterpreted. And as we've seen already from all the kind of content around VE Day, which then led to a spike in coronavirus cases 2 weeks later, who'd have thought? You know, I genuinely am worried that this new messaging is it's so unhelpful that I actually feel like it's pretty dangerous. So, sorry to kind of come to the end of my flow on a negative note. If you want to be soothed and reassured, there's always the NHS website. They are doing amazing work, and I'm not just talking about the people on the front lines, I'm talking about the people behind the scenes, the people who do the design and development for that site. They have done incredible work in a very, very short space of time under all kinds of crazy pressures. So, you know, bravo to them. Anyway, back to us and talking about how you, if you are interested in learning more about content design as a discipline, what you can do. And one of the things that I really consciously didn't want to do was give you a list of hints and tips about how to make stuff content designed, because I don't think it's that simple. And I think that kind of messaging is actually makes people think that content design is just copy editing. It's just content writing. But it's much, as you can see, it's much more complicated than that. There are many more considerations around it, but I also didn't want to leave you hanging. So if you're interested in improving the readability of any content, this is a great place to start. So this is Content Design London are run by, headed up by this woman called Sarah Richards, who was one of the people instrumental in kind of creating the discipline of content design as it is, you know, commonly thought of these days. And she did that while she was at gov.uk. So she was one of the people who was instrumental in taking all those little disparate governmental department sites that all looked different, worked differently, and were they, you know, very, very different levels of effectiveness, and has brought them into this government design system model where everything is very, very clear and based on evidence, based on data. And then she's created this brilliant resource which we can all use. So it's a universal content style guide. Great, we don't have to do the work. She and her team have done a lot of the work for us, and they explain how to create clear language. such as using bullet points, shortening your sentences, being very, very clear about the terms you use and making sure that your audience understand those terms and they understand them in the same way that you understand them. Thinking about devices and channels, like, you know, going into kind of content strategy of how to make sure your content works across the board rather than just in one place. And then, yeah, also images, really, really important. I think there's a lot of sharing ideas and communicating within images, and we have to be really, really aware that a lot of people won't be able to draw information from images. So this is a really, really brilliant site. I highly recommend it for anybody. Or there's a book as well. You can get hold of a book. I have the book. I'm waving it now. I don't know if you're able to see me. And then this is also brilliant, although I have a caveat here. I don't know why there's a random bullet point. I'm sorry. The caveat is use this with caution. It's really, really fantastic, but you know, it's not always applicable. So, because people get obsessed with this because it is so clever, but it's not always right. Because it is basically what it is, an automated system. You cut and paste whatever copy it is that you're writing into this app, and it will point out to you where sentences are too dense, where they have too many clauses, where you're using words that are actually more complicated than they need to be, such as utilize here instead of use, where you're using words that probably don't need to be there and are just cluttering up the page, such as perhaps, helpfully, or where you're using the passive voice. And it can be really, really handy if you're getting used to writing clearly. But then I think once you get beyond that, you are going to have times where you want to break these rules. And it's the same in any kind of design. Sometimes the rule breaking can be the thing that really helps you push the user's understanding over the top. But, you know, as a starting point, this is brilliant. Really, really clever. This book is the definitive book on content design. It's written by that woman, Sarah Richards, that I was just talking about, and it takes you through the methodology for content designers, from research to creating user stories to modeling like the user journeys through the site to you know, and it actually shows you how much needs to be done before you even start thinking about what you're going to put on the page. But the brilliant thing about content design that I found is that if you do it well, the content almost creates itself, because you know exactly what you're trying to convey and you know how to do it. So it's really, really good. And I think that also can extrapolate to the whole design process, which means that if you have really solid content to begin with, that helps everybody else who's within that design team, because everybody knows what you're talking about and how you need to say it. And so that helps with the visual design, that helps with the information architecture, that helps narrows, you know, it can really help focus you on what features you need and what you don't need, which means you can spend less time on development, and developers know exactly what they need to do. It's, you know, content first again. And then this is a really good book. Abby Covert is a fantastic information architect. She is I don't know, I think she's quite brilliant. So yeah, highly recommended if you're interested in how content is structured. And then this is a really good book if you are in a position where you hold the budget and you are able to bring in content people. This could be the book that, you know, makes the decision for you. Or if you are working within a team and you want to persuade people to bring in content, this is also a really good book for persuading people that content needs to be an integral part of your design process. Otherwise, unfortunately, content design will happen by default and it will probably not be very good. Right, that's what I have to say. So, gosh, I'm not even sure if anybody's still there. I hope that was useful. I hope I didn't go too quickly. I was a bit worried on time, but yeah, thank you.
It was great. Thank you, Jo.
That was amazing.
Very good.
Yes, thank you.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much, Jo. That was brilliant. I think for me, coming in relatively new to this, it's I feel a lot more confident talking with content designers and just people in digital going forward. I think it's a really comprehensive overview. So thank you very much. We'll open up the floor now to some questions. We've got a few in the chat I haven't looked at yet. So let's have a look. Let's see what we've got. Yeah, good. Okay, I'll just praise. No questions in there. So if anyone has any questions at all now, please.
Yeah. Hi, Jo. I had a question about the perception of sort of dumbing down, which is obviously, like I say, it's giving clarity to the message. How do you reconcile something like the personality or tone of voice of a brand versus the sort of that level of clarity?
Oh, because that is essentially achieving that balance between the business goal and the user needs, and they have to work together. And I think one of the things that content designers have to do is advocate for the user within any kind of project. Because often there can be this pressure to, oh yeah, we've already got our brand, like we already know how we talk, and it's you know, and it could be that, you know, you are talking to a very narrow subset of users, and so like having copy that's full of, say, idioms and full of phrases that are very, very relevant to that particular group, so that they can then self-identify as being associated with the brand. That could be the right content design for that particular scenario. But also within that, you have to consider those people are still going to be navigating around that product, and so you get the tone of voice right, but then you also need to be using your content to make sure that they can navigate and take action. Because if you get your tone of voice perfect, but no one knows how to find the shopping basket,
yeah.
You know, so it's always a balance between the two. And so yeah, and I think there's, as content designers, you get used to having lots of difficult conversations with people sometimes, and like navigating those difficult conversations, because you want people to you want the user to have the best possible experience. And it might be that within the organization, you have, say, subject matter experts or stakeholders who are very wedded to a particular way of speaking about things, and you need to do the work of changing their minds, and that's hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's worth it when you make those breakthroughs, and you see, and you can show them through testing. You can show them how users respond.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
No worries. Good question.
Anyone else have any questions at all?
I have one quick question. Hello, Jo.
Hi.
And Luke and everyone. I really liked the concept of the images and copy and whatever being a language, and we use that like as a material. It's a nice kind of analogy. I was wondering, do you have anything more on that and that kind of concept? Like, has that idea come from somewhere else, or it's something I quite like to explore a bit more?
Yeah, if you read the Abby Covert book,
cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially that's one of the ideas that I definitely kind of borrowed, stole, taken, absorbed from her writing, and yeah, that's it. So it is about content design is all about language and how we use it, and that's where content design is getting really interesting as well, as we start to think more and more about voice interfaces. And writing scripts for those, and conversational design, which is like, you know, a whole different kettle of fish I haven't got time to go into now, but just, you know, so fascinating. But yeah, so if you look at the Abby Covert book and maybe look into ideas around content design, conversational design.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. That was really helpful, and yeah, great talk.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. So thanks very much, Jo, and also thanks to, I think I saw Lauren Pope on here as well for putting us together as well. It's much appreciated. Thank you. I think there's particularly around content and content design. There's a pretty good scene for it around Brighton. I realised early on with these talks that there's people from all over coming onto these, but if you are based around Brighton, there's a lot. I recommend you reach out to Jo or Lauren as well, and they'll fill you in on some of the different meetups you can go to. I know Codes is a well-attended one, and Curio, that's how I met Lauren as well, is the place to be. So yeah, feel free to get in touch.
Rachel McConnell is a content strategist and content designer, very, very, very experienced, and she's been running some really, really good remote content design courses. I think they're incredibly cheap for the amount of information that you can get out of them. So I highly recommend looking her up on Twitter. And she's also got a bunch of Medium articles around content design and why you need a content design team. I help run the UX Brighton show and tell. So if anybody's interested in coming along to that and showing some of your work, that would be really, really great. I'd love that. And that it doesn't matter which area of product design or service design you work in, it's all relevant to the user experience. So it doesn't matter if you just define yourself as a user experience designer or not, it'd still be really, really great to see you there. We're hoping to have a remote version of that in June. And then also, yeah, Codes, as you've mentioned, and there's a really good Codes Slack channel that you can get involved in. And there's another content plus design Slack channel, which is really, really good, has loads of tips and jobs and techniques and discussion on there about research and things of that nature. So that's really, really good to get involved in as well if you're interested. But yeah, and I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn and the usual places. If anybody has any questions or would like to chat more about any particular aspect of content design or getting into content design, I'm more than happy to share.
Awesome. Brilliant.